Hey everyone, this is Rafael Parsacala. I am a marketing associate here at TrueFort, and I would like to introduce a new series of videos just for our social channels where we get to learn about some of our team members. There's a lot of great work that happens here behind the scenes at TrueFort, and I'm hoping to share some of that. And with us today is Olivia Walsh. Olivia, thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm doing well, and I'm looking forward to learning more about all of the TrueFort team members that you'll interview.
Nice. Me too. Just to start off our conversation, can you tell me about what you do here at TrueFort?
Yeah, sure thing. So my title is Global Events Manager. So at a high level, what that means is I spend a lot of time developing marketing strategies globally that ideally will start to drive some business demand for TrueFort. So putting us in a position where we can participate in programs and events that are going to focus on prospect and customer engagement, pipeline acceleration, and making sure that we get the ROI on our investments. We try to do this by getting in front of target audiences, creating awareness and brand recognition. Typically, we're trying to determine buyer intent and priorities in the different programs we're participating in, and then providing some networking and thought leadership opportunities, which ideally the end result will be some pipeline influence and positive brand impact.
Definitely, yeah. Now just sort of taking it back in time, looking at your previous experience, I see a lot of cybersecurity positions, right? Was this something that you wanted to do from the start, or was this something, or did like you just happened to start there and you're like, this is something that I can, see myself doing long term?
Yeah. So cybersecurity was never really on my radar. It definitely fell in my lap. I was working in an event management role, and a friend reached out, and I took a chance on a role ended up being an awesome company. And it allowed me to work under the guidance of some amazing mentors. So in the marketing space, but also in the engineering side of things, the director of marketing and engineering. And they were both really patient with me and taught me a lot about marketing and cybersecurity as a whole. I say that it was like a deer in the headlights. They were very patient with that energy that I brought to the table. I was obviously really eager to learn, but there was a lot of things I didn't know. Like, for example, what a VPN was, which I laugh at now, but I just had no frame of reference. The fact that they were willing to invest their time in me was really just an amazing opportunity for learning and honestly just to have a role with so much support. And then as I got to know the cybersecurity industry, I realized that I was pretty passionate about the why behind it, right? We're solving business problems and helping businesses and people. So the why was there, and as a relatively nerdy person, I appreciated the technology as well.
There you go.
Yeah. So, and then as far as like less about the industry and more about my specific role. So generating demand in the cyberspace and even just being in events. They always say that event people are a special breed, and I definitely, go and really detail oriented. So I definitely fit into that prototype. There's a lot of opportunity for creativity and flexibility. It's fast paced, keeps me moving and problem solving and thinking. So I appreciate all of those aspects of the role. And then of course, there's just nothing more rewarding than being at the end of an event and, hearing that people had a good time and things went well. So
Definitely, yeah. I mean, let's dig into that. Since you've had experience before as an events manager, can you tell me about what's unique about your experience with TrueFort so far?
Yeah. So I'm pretty excited about TrueFort for a lot of reasons, but the position that we're in right now is that we're driving awareness, and for everyone that interacts with TrueFort, for a lot of them, it's their first time. And as I found out recently, for a lot of events, we're still educating the market on microsegmentation. So for that to be someone's first impression of us, it's a huge opportunity. Obviously the goal is to have positive experiences and make some impactful impressions, but to be able to create that and get the messaging and the value prop right and delivered to people is critical. in my experience, I find that to be a more exciting place to be than when you're at a company where people kind of already have those preconceived notions of what your company does, those opinions about your technology, and
Sure, yeah.
what problems you solve. I love security folks, but and they'll probably take this personally, but there are a lot of people out there who just, think they know everything. And so when you're in a role where they think they already know everything about you, it can be tough to backtrack and try to, redirect their frame of reference and understand what those preconceived notions are, and then, try to re-educate. So we're not in that position at TrueFort, and it's an awareness building stage, and it's really exciting to have those first impacts.
Yeah, definitely. We're gonna have some comments right now. It's like, I do know everything. What are you talking about?
Yeah, seriously.
Oh, yeah.
Or they won't watch the interview because they think I'm gonna say.
I watched the whole interview. What are you talking about? With that in mind, I mean, just talking about building awareness and everything, there's a lot of things to manage in terms of building that. Like, there's so many different conferences, and there's so many different audiences, so many groups that have specific conferences, and then just different customers too that have different needs, right? With all that being said, it's safe to say that there's a lot of moving parts, right? Can you talk to me about what's important to you when working in such a dynamic environment?
Totally, yeah. As I always like to say, it's herding cats. So there's kind of two pieces that I always think are pretty critical. One is, staying organized, which is kind of a generic answer, but I would say that I am a pretty highly organized person, and I tend to have a skill set that allows me to plan and execute projects through some challenging obstacles. There are so many pieces to events, as you mentioned, contracts, deliverables, and locations, even like dealing with unions and all of that. So you don't want to send the wrong things to the wrong places, or even just, spend money on an event that's not going to be successful. So having the awareness of the market. I think the most important part of staying organized for me is trying to structure my thinking in a way that I'm managing the small details with big picture thinking. So making sure it's all cohesive and going together.
Sure.
And then the other piece of that success is alignment. So making sure that everyone on our team is on the same page, as far as from a strategic point of view of why we're doing what we're doing, but also like what are we actually doing, what the plan is, and the logistics side of things. There's we got to maximize these big investments that we're making, and it's really important that everyone is successful, not just like myself as the event manager.
100%. Yeah. In that same light, I mean, how do you deal with stress during the work week then, or during an event? Because I'm sure there are things to be stressed about during an event, not just within the larger work week, right?
Yeah, totally. There are always factors that are out of our control.
Yes, there are things to be stressed about.
you can, I mean, when you're shipping things break in transit, or they get lost, or so I try not to let the little things disrupt my workflow so much, but there's been a few times where Staples Delivery or Instacart has like totally come through to save us. So having some problem solving skills is one way to deal with stress. And then I would say the other piece of it is that I typically try not to get too stressed. I have tried to master that work-life balance, insert cliche LinkedIn post here.
Yeah.
Prioritizing that, find that time to find those things that make me happy, right? Whether it be living in Colorado and having the great outdoors in my backyard and exercising, skiing, biking, or, even just going out in the backyard. I've got a great dog. I like to spend a lot of time with him. And then, just having a few passion projects that you work on outside of work, things that you enjoy investing your time and energy into. I try to set up some systems and processes that allow me to have as much control over the chaos as is, reasonably possible, which allows for a smoother ride. But the last thing I would say on that is I think because I like what I do, it's not as stressful as it would be for someone who's, doesn't enjoy their job. So
Right, definitely. Live in Colorado. The entire the rest of your answer just went over my head.
Live in Colorado.
That's the only thing I got from it.
Yeah, I mean that those are just my outlets, right? Like I think depending on where you live, if you can find things that, go to the library, or I don't know, what do people do if they're not outside?
What do people do when they're not in Colorado?
Exactly.
No, definitely. Yeah, kind of switching gears a bit. And gonna call you out for something you did, but in Falcon 2022, one of our more recent events, when planning for our booth, you took a bit of a chance, right? You, in place of the company name, where it typically says just TrueFort, you decided to replace that with leverage your existing CrowdStrike agents, right? And I remember you talking about that with the team, and you were like, okay, this is either gonna go really, really good, really, really bad. And thankfully it went really, really good, and it paid dividends, right? Everyone talked about how I was like, yeah, it's like, go marketing. That was such a cool move. Can you talk about the importance in making moves like that in circumstances where it's much more easier to just play it safe?
Totally. Yeah. So I think there's an importance, but also, having leadership that, like our boss, Matt, who approves those kinds of things. Thanks, Matt, for letting me take those chances. That's a big piece of the puzzle. But when you're an early stage startup with a huge opportunity for awareness, standing out is critical. And, kind of like we were talking about earlier, those impressions you make, and, just having that opportunity to, take that chance and make a different impression or a better impression. I can't tell you, and this is corny to talk about swag, but I can't tell you how many folks just remember our socks. And sometimes you spend a little bit more money on the swag items for an early stage company, but the little things can make a big impact.
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah. So, and sometimes the budget and perspective has to be flexible to make those big moves. We had folks from a show, InfoSec World in London, or InfoSec London or Europe. Anyways, they remember, so they got a pair of socks from us then, and then we ran into them at another event in the US, and they remembered us, and they're like, oh, we saw you guys got SOC 2 certified since we met you at the last event. You should put that on your next pair of socks.
They've been looking for us the entire time. Went all across the world just to make that joke.
On the hunt for the best joke. Yeah. So I mean, I would count that as a win. They remembered us, they followed us, we made an impression. So something that kind of always set the tone for me when early in my career, I was at RSA for one of the first times, and I'll never forget that there was this protest going on outside, and I remember kind of being overwhelmed. I was like, what's going on? Like, I've never seen anything like this. All these security analysts everywhere, they were protesting, the widening cybersecurity skills gap, how everyone in senior roles had all these skills and there was no people to fill entry-level positions. And then that was creating a struggle to attract talent. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? And, it's fair. They were talking about the burnout, and, it's a very real problem. But it was Swimlane, a cybersecurity company. It was a fake protest that they had pulled together with their PR agency. And
bold moves.
Really bold moves. They got shut down. They didn't even exhibit at our RSA. But I just remember like people were talking about it all week. And I'm sure, it was in the news, seeing the big black curtain that came out and got put around the swim lane booth, it got people talking. So I'm sure they got some more or even better ROI than they would have just exhibiting. So that was a bold move that stood out to me, and it worked. And, any opportunity to make a bold choice is worth it, in my opinion.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, talking about, even just on that subject of burnout and their own struggles, I guess we can take that as a cool sort of segue about yourself. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you face personally right now in as the events manager?
Yeah, sure thing. So one challenge for me is that I want things to go off without a hitch. And so when our team is traveling, I tend to, want to make sure they're doing okay. For example, when we were in Florida for a recent event, the hurricane hit, and I was just really concerned about the team's well-being. So that's less of a challenge and more part of the job, but definitely something that affects me in my role.
Sure, yeah.
And then I would say the second piece that I would answer this question with is more of a challenge, and that is just the sprawl of platforms and different varieties of communications and event management tools that we use. And I just feel like there has to be a way to streamline these things. There's Adobe for design or Slack or Teams, or you list off every corporate tool you've ever used ever, but every other part of the business world seems to have figured this out, but somehow in events we just use a million different portals and platforms. And as a security company, you think, or even as in the security industry, you think we would want to limit the number of things that we're logging into.
Exactly, 100%.
So,
yeah.
That's my biggest frustration, just keeping track of what's where all the time.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Just talking about experience, talking about your experience rather, no one can dispute how much time you've spent with marketing and how much time you've spent within the cybersecurity space. With this in mind, what are some things you'd like to see more of in the industry?
Totally. Yeah. So my favorite statistic to spout off is that only 25% of the tech workforce is women. And I think it's, it's obvious that there's less minority populations than there should be in the tech workforce. So I would say that I'd like to see more of is, diversity and women. And the second piece of that, which I think will help improve the numbers, is mentorship. So diversity is essential in business for a few ways, but I think primarily for businesses to want to stay relevant to their customers and have competitive talent in the market for their employees. And then as employees, I would like to see us, have higher expectations for workplaces, and that they are inclusive of all needs and value the diverse perspectives and skills and experiences they bring, those different, people bring to the table. So kind of two sides of it, the workforces and the, people that are doing the work, kind of holding people and businesses accountable, but also the businesses taking some accountability.
Absolutely.
And then just to touch on the mentorship piece to wrap it up, I think that everyone needs to have an advocate and people who help you see where your career growth potentially could be, and even just, networking and meeting the right people. I've had the opportunity to have those people in my life, and it's stuck with me as extremely impactful. And the other thing I think is important with the mentorship side of thing is that'll allow more access to education and information and equity. There's a lot of money and a lot of opportunity in tech, and with a lot of different variety of roles, there's a million jobs. So I'd like to see more diverse people brought into these communities that maybe wouldn't have access to them on their own.
100%. It all comes around, right?
It's better for everyone that way.
Yeah, definitely. With that, that was my last question. So I think that wraps up everything on my end. I just want to give a big thank you to Olivia for taking the time out of her busy day to talk to me. We just covered about how you manage a million different moving parts. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule for this. Just want to do a quick plug for our socials. Follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. There are lots of exciting things happening with TrueFort right now, and even better things coming in the future. Thanks for watching, and hope you all tune in next time.